What's going on, Atlanta Falcons fans, man? Y'all know who it is, your boy Antoine Smith. Stopping in right quick to give y'all a quick draft profile of a player that the Falcons have on their radar, and they're actually bringing him in for a top 30 visit. And he's, to some people, some analysts, some journalists, says he's one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL draft.
He has the ability and shows flashes of a faster Larry Fitzgerald.
Then you have some that say, can't miss prospect.
Ted Hurst is a first round pick. There's no Calvin Johnsons in this draft, but he is very, very gifted, but he's also a guy who's competitive.
They have him tagged to the Falcons for some reason, and I agree with it. He went to Georgia State University, but let me give you the download on him right quick. Ted Hurst is about 6'3", about 195 pounds, roughly around 195 to 200. You talk about a guy who has fluid hips. That means he can break in and out of routes on the drop of a dime. His run after the catch is very good. His numbers were very good 2 years at Georgia State. 1,695 yards and 15 touchdowns in those 2 seasons. Ranked top 5 in school history in both categories. Elite hands. He catches the ball with his hands. He's a red zone threat. And you talk about a guy that is a 50-50 guy. Yes, at 6'3", 195. He's a 50-50 catch guy. Catch rate is crazy. Run out the catch. So when you talk about a guy that has good separation, good catch profile, and 6'3", and you have the right quarterbacks, that's very appealing. You talk about explosion and instincts, long speed, long strides. He has that, man. So as I look at that, man, Ted Hurst is one of those guys that I think has flown up under the radar for a long time because of where he started off at school. And look, these things happen. But the Athletics, Bruce Feldman, he did an interview on the Athletic, and he says he thinks Hurst is probably a big sleep in this draft. He goes to a Division I school. He could have been a first round pick. But he said, I think if Ted went to Georgia, Ted went somewhere else in the SEC, Ted would be a first round pick. When I talk to people about him, they're like, man, his traits, they're not off the chart. They're not they are eye catching. You're talking about an 11-foot broad jump. I'm sorry, guy that's legit 6'3", 200 pounds. There's no Calvin Johnson in this draft, but he's a very, very gifted. But he's also a guy who's competitive. And that's from Bruce Feldman, who thinks Ted Hurst could be one of those guys that can slide through the draft. And then you remember the ESPN Jordan Reed article, what I talked on about 2 days ago, and it talked about what they're looking at in the NFL draft, what the intel is as to what they're aiming for in that draft with that 48 pick. Defensive tackle came up, and we talked about that. But a position that routinely popped in the conversation, they said, was wide receiver. Even after adding Jahan Dotson, Olamide Zaccheaus, the Falcons want to field a person that can stretch the field at some point on day 2. And right now, they have Ted Hurst projected as a 3rd-round pick. But as we get closer to the draft, teams have needs. They're almost done with the free agency until after the draft. So teams that need wide receivers, they may reach. And he's one of those guys that may be worth reaching for, either at 48 or 79 isn't a reach. But if you make a trade and you think he's your guy, you can move back up the board to go get him. But Ted Hurst, I think, could come in and play a second fiddle to Drake London as the number 2, because Jahan Dotson, as I told y'all, to me is the number 3 at best. Olamide Zaccheaus is the number 4 and the special teams guy. And Kyle Pitts, to me, is still the number 2 target if he remains with the Falcons. He's on a franchise tag, and I think this could get very interesting when it, get closer to the draft. But Ted Hurst, man, he's actually on my radar, and he's a big sleeper in this draft. But tell me how y'all think he would feel, how y'all feel he would fit with the Falcons as a number 2 guy and as the 48th pick or the 79th pick in the draft. Drop them comments in the comment box. Let me know. This your boy Antoine Smith signing off. I will holler at y'all soon, man. Peace.